It's a chaotic week in the world of AI. सब कुछ उल्टा हो गया है. Earlier, things used to be made in China that were cheap knockoffs of what the rest of the world did. Now it's the opposite. Welcome to Overpowered. Varun, what the hell is going on?
Today's Overpowered China edition.
Yeah. I got DeepSeek. First of all, tell me, what did you think of the model?
I thought it was pretty nice.
It's pretty good, right?
See, a lot of people haven't bought O1 Pro, the $200 a month thing. But I was trying
Correct.
O1 Pro. It was really good. But man, DeepSeek is better. It's better.
Is it? Did you find it to be that much better?
Yeah. Like it just felt like it was better. Like it's not benchmark based, it's just vibes based. It answered well. There was meat in it. It wasn't. See what's happened from GPT-2 to GPT-3 to now this. It's like it's just gone from generic slop that was producing to now. I'm like, oh, okay. There's meat in this. There's insights in this when it responds to me. So I think that's lovely and it's so surprising. And like, I don't know. There's so much cope on the internet now, and also at the same time, like I've also realized that so many people just want to see OpenAI fail, right? So it's like there's so many mixed emotions on the internet, and I haven't seen something like DeepSeek get so mainstream, like it's on all news media, it's everywhere. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it's ridiculous how quickly it, like, there's a Google Trends chart actually. Let's pull that chart up right now. As of right now, based on trends in the last month, DeepSeek is trending as high as OpenAI, as high as ChatGPT, if not higher. There are some moments where it actually was technically more searched for than ChatGPT, which is kind of bizarre. Also, I want to bring this tweet to attention. Okay, this is something that I found online. This is poetry written by DeepSeek. This is the first time that I felt like, holy shit, this is actually really like human grade, if not better. This is really, really good, and DeepSeek was able to do it. And actually, the biggest problem is that it's free. It's free for everyone. It kind of dismantles OpenAI's business model.
Yeah, but extrapolate this. My thing is, I don't know if there's any business here, right? Like when OpenAI was the only king in town, you were like, oh my God, OpenAI is going to win everything. Oh my God, we should find a way to invest in OpenAI because it's going to capture the light cone of all future progress. But then Claude came out and we realized, okay, this is not a one-man show anymore. Now DeepSeek is out and now other people are able to replicate it. And DeepSeek, like the paper, I mean, it's not open source, it's open weights, but they've kind of gone through. So I'll tell you the innovation behind DeepSeek, okay? So what DeepSeek has done is there's a new training process they have called R10. Okay, so till now, whenever you train model, you use something called supervised fine-tuning, which is you show a bunch of inputs and outputs, and you say this is when this input comes, this output should be there, right? Like a bunch of inputs and results. What these guys did was they said we will organically allow the thing to learn, right? So what we'll do is, let's say we give it a math problem, we'll have a calculator in the back calculating the score. Let's say you're doing 5 plus 7 or whatever, right? You ask that as a question. Instead of us manually feeding in the output of what 5 plus 7 should be, we'll have a calculator figuring that out. And they did this both for accuracy, for all math related questions, for all coding related questions, and they did this for format. So it's like, okay, when you output your chain of thought, we want it to be in exactly this format, and we'll grade you, we'll penalize you if you output the wrong format. And it turns out it learned this reinforcement learning on its own. And I'll tell you what the implication of this is, right? Basically what happened is it did RL on its own. We called it RL0. And of course, the actual DeepSeek model that you used, there was still some SFT that was done after that, right? Forget about the technical parts. The point is this was done at a very low budget. And I'm very, very, very confident now OpenAI and Anthropic and all the others are now going to replicate the same RL method, but with much larger amounts of compute. Right? So actually now it's going to be a rebound where you're going to see the American guys now come out with all their compute capability and just show you a much better model. So I don't think there's any end to this progress. Every time a new breakthrough happens, it's just, it actually empowers anyone with more compute because they're just going to be able to make a much higher quality model. And because they have so much compute and the prices are dropping, they'll be able to discount even further. So I think the cost of base models is zero, and it's going to be zero over the long run.
Tell me something. When I keep seeing these charts that keep showing up on Twitter of, oh, this has performed better than O1 benchmarks or Claude's benchmarks. What are the benchmarks that we're talking about? Like here I can see
MMLU, GPQA.
Yeah, what do these benchmarks mean?
So the easiest way to describe it is, let's just assume there was a bunch of questions. You're expecting a certain type of answer from it. If it solves it, if the answer is somewhat similar to what the answer you expect from human people is, then you say, okay, it's passed this question. And then you have like maybe 20 questions or 50 questions. It's almost like exams, right? You give it a bunch of exams. You're like, can it pass the exams or not? Like, for example, the SWE benchmark is related to code, right? It's like, okay, if we give it this question, can it write good enough code so that it's able to compile and solve this problem and get you this specific answer, right? So you have these like 10 question sets, 50 question sets, 100 question sets, and you see, do they pass, right? Is it 80% of questions that it answers, 90% of questions that it answers, 30% of questions that it answers? But in my honest opinion, I think benchmarks are useless. I'll tell you why. Because after some time, everyone tries to game the benchmarks, right? They're like, we'll train on questions very similar to what's in the benchmark or on the benchmark questions itself to get the right answers, right? And I think that kind of pollutes benchmarks. So you need to keep, like, there's now a new benchmark called humanities last exam, right? Someone's like, I'll make it even harder. Like the Scale AI guys came out and said, I'll make it even harder set of questions. I think this is not fundamentally useful, and I think it's good to grade LLMs just based on vibes, right? You'll probably have like personal benchmarks at the end of the day, like Tanmay's writing benchmark, where you look at the writing output and you're like, I'm a good writer, so I think this is like 8 out of 10 good or 9 out of 10 good. You grade it based on vibes. I know that's not a scientific way to do things, but otherwise, because you can cheat on benchmarks, you will always have benchmark cheating.
It's like rote learning. Like if I knew what the format of the SSC exam paper is, that's just what I'm going to study. That's not roughly making me smarter. That was the first question I had. The second question I had is actually this might be, I don't know if we want to use it or no. I'm actually a little confused about, now there's actually many, when I open ChatGPT, there's many different models. Right? We began with 3.5, then we began with 4, and then we had 4.0. Now we have O1 and O1 mini. Can you for the layman just differentiate between, okay, what is the difference between 4.0 and the reasoning model? Like why is the reasoning model so groundbreaking? Like I remember when the reasoning model came out, everyone kind of went bonkers saying, oh, like it's over. Like why is it such a big deal? What's the difference between 4 and 4.0 and the O1?
Yeah. So remember we built something called AutoCode Pro a long time ago, right? Where we said this we'll make an AI agent that sort of writes code. Okay. Now you don't build the model from scratch. There's already the model you can put in GPT or whatever as the base model, right? And then you say, okay, write code for this. I'll tell you the biggest problem with AutoCode Pro or any coding agent, right? Which is it gets sidetracked. Okay, it's not looking at the problem as a whole. It's not thinking through the problem. So if you say, okay, build me an app to do A, B, C, D, it'll build A and then it'll forget about B, C, D and it'll be like, shit, by the time I got into C, I've written A wrong because I didn't think about the relationship between A and C, right? It's sort of like that. So what we used to do when we'd write the prompt is think the problem through carefully, plan out all the steps, and then one by one go through the steps and write the code, right? This is what we tell it explicitly. But then what OpenAI realized is this reasoning, this chain of thought, right? Like how you can go from A to B to C, like think the problem through. It is possible to train on this. It's possible to collect a lot of chain of thought of how you would solve a problem. Just get humans there and be like, if you were to solve this problem, write down an entire script of what is your step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, right? Plan out the reasoning first. So that's reasoning. Now, what OpenAI did is it hid chain of thought, just showed like a small trace of the chain of thought, but behind the scenes, it was doing chain of thought. Because OpenAI's biggest fear was, if we do this chain of thought, other people can just copy it, because people were training on the outputs of the model anyway. They didn't want them training the outputs of chain of thought. Okay, now Google's doing something new where they're saying this chain of thought, sometimes it hallucinates, because sometimes if you ask GPT, well, how do I make a, like if you ask O1, right, the one with chain of thought, if you ask it, well, how do I make cake? Sometimes it'll say something really stupid like, okay, let's start with a breeze. The chain of thought starts with random things, right? So it just hallucinates like crazy. So Google's coming up with something new, and they demoed something called alpha proof, right? Where they're like, we'll do this chain of thought, but we'll do it in formal language. We'll make the chain of thought code, right? We'll make the model think in code. If you look at how this new DeepSeek thing does chain of thought, sometimes, and this is the R10, not the new one that they trained. It's basically, sometimes it mixes Chinese tokens in the chain of thought. So it doesn't have to be human readable, right? It's just some random thing that's like, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And I think what OpenAI's new set of models are, they're reasoning models. Okay, now all that the difference between O1 and O1 Pro, the one that guzzles compute, is think harder. Use more tokens to think, right? So you can really press the pedal on think much, much harder about this problem. I don't know if this is the optimal way to solve, the problem of intelligence, but I would argue that we already have intelligence, at least from a text perspective, that is better than average human intelligence. So I don't know where the excess mileage is. Like, what is something that DeepSeek cannot do in terms of writing, in terms of thinking about problems, in terms of planning, that the average human, not the best humans, but that the average human cannot do? If you pick someone random off an Indian street and ask them to think about a problem and explain how they construct a house or explain how they do this or explain how they do that, I think DeepSeek is already better. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I get it. So effectively, a reasoning model is just showing you the reasoning that's going behind an output that the model is giving you.
Yeah, it's doing chain of thought, and then based on the chain of thought, it's outputting tokens on what the output should be.
So the previous model before the reasoning model, Varun, the previous model, it also probably had a chain of thought that it was following anyway. Look, if I input X and there is output Y, there must be something happening between X and Y that it's anyway thinking.
No, actually,
Now
it's
just
one
exposing the thinking further.
No, in the old models, there was no chain of thought because it's not trained on chain of thought, right? Now, we don't know inside the models are black boxes. We don't know exactly what's going on inside the model. But inside the model, now we have trained specifically on chain of thought tokens. We have said, this is how you solve this problem, and you have lots and lots and lots of data of what the problem statement is, how it's supposed to be solved, what the output is. So how it's supposed to be solved, the chain of thought, we've actually trained on it, right? The cool thing about DeepSeek is now we're able to do it without specific examples. We're able to do it purely based on format and based on accuracy. I don't know how this continues. Like, I feel like it's so hard to predict where the next breakthrough is. And every time you think this is the way we're going to solve this problem, something new comes out, because till now we thought, just throw more compute at the problem now and, just get more data labelers to kind of, give you more chain of thought and show input output examples. Now, like, maybe it can learn by itself, right? It can learn. So I feel like, I don't know where the next thing is. Nobody knows where the next thing is. The thing that's confusing to me, and, we work on, we use these models to build things on top. We don't build the models, right? As a team. So for us, it's like, actually, you can just, it's so generic that you can swap out DeepSeek or Chat. Like, for 99.9% of application use cases, I'm like, it doesn't matter what the underlying model is. As long as we roughly understand what's going on, and as long as we can roughly expect the users not to be confused by the output of whatever it is we are doing on top of the models, it's good. Like, a good example is avatars, right? It actually doesn't matter if you have, like, if you echo out 5% realism improvements or emotion improvements, because it's already at a point where that 5% doesn't matter, right? So my worry is, does the increment, of course, we're going to have incremental output, right? But for the task that we use it for, does it matter? No. Now the next questions are the random stuff, right? Which is, okay, if you had to book flight tickets, there's so many edge cases that go on in booking flight tickets, right? Maybe you clicked on something, maybe a pop-up showed up. How do you deal with it? So I feel like the more important breakthrough in the last couple of weeks, which everyone just forgot because of DeepSeek, was operator, right? If you saw OpenAI's operator, it's not available in India, but I feel like there's just so much to learn, and I feel it'll be sort of trained the same way, right? Like, I think the more people that use operator and sort of step in to fix issues and say, no, you made a mistake, you clicked on the wrong link, I'm actually going to click on this. The more data they collect around that, I just feel like that's the next real breakthrough, right? To be able to do this ambiguous stuff like book flight tickets and then check if the flight tickets appeared in your email. I'm very excited about that. And, all major execs in companies are very excited about this.
So have you actually, let's get back to the reasoning model, okay? Because I feel like since I think since 4, the dramatic new jump has been either the reasoning model or now operator. Have you used the reasoning model outside of anything of coding? Have you used it for anything else?
So I think I've used it a lot for self-medicine, medical problem statements. I took this happened, and then this happened, and then I fell sick on this date, and this is my HRV, and like I've used it for that. And with OpenAI, the O1 model, you can actually expand the thinking column, right? That's not the full chain of thought. It's sort of like traces of the chain of thought, but it's descriptive. It's, at least I know it's going on the right track. But I'm telling you, with DeepSeek and even with OpenAI, like I'm only looking for the output as the end user. Like the chain of thought is not that valuable, because when you see the DeepSeek chain of thought, right? It's like, okay, user has asked me for this, but it's asked me not to be too aggressive about it. It's literally like the monologue of a human being. I don't know, like I know the outputs are being improved in the response that it gives me, and I know the chain of thought is reasonably accurate. I just don't know if I care about the chain of thought as much as an end user, right? If I'm using the model for like medical this thing or whatever, right? Even for code, I don't know if I really care about it so much. But I do know that the outputs get better, and I do know that if we swapped out in AutoCode Pro, if we swapped GPT with DeepSeek, it would have much better outputs, right? It's almost like this accuracy improvement, right? You go from a low-res photograph to a high-res photograph.
And you found it in O1 Pro, it's definitely, once you throw more compute in, the output is just better.
Yeah, it's better for tougher problems. But I just feel like on a day-to-day basis, I don't have so many tough problems.
Correct.
Like I'm just like 99.9% of the time, I'm not someone who works in research, right? So I'm not like looking for, well, if I do this, how will the reaction come out? I'm looking for generic based problem. Okay, I need to plan this thing. I need to give this employee this thing. Like it's much simpler problems. So I feel like 99% of human use cases are already covered. Okay, but then today I read some stat which is that some 10 or 15% of Europe has actually used AI, right, in business. I'm like,
Oh, already? Okay.
just 10 or 15% of Europe businesses have used AI. Right? So 85% have not used any AI in their business, right? Like for whatever reason.
Oh, okay. AI, okay.
Even for personal productivity.
Operator.
So the weird thing for me is just adoption of AI is much lower than I thought it would be when it's such a clear advantage. It's a clear advantage. And it's not even like somebody being a purist and saying, no, I don't want to use AI. Actually, most software engineers are using AI, right? But I think it's like the random people who are just like my mom or my dad or whatever. My dad actually uses a lot of AI, but let's say my mom, who's just like, I don't see the value of this right now. Or you know, I don't know how to learn it. And there's nothing to learn. You just tell them it's chat and it's like almost like a human being on the other side. They're still apprehensive to try. So I feel like the gap between the people who know things, right, at various degrees, who have just tried the models versus the people who have not even started is just widening. And 99% of the value is already there. Like it can already solve so many of the issues.
Correct.
So I feel like some people are just becoming hyper productive while other people are just normal, and there's no way to calculate this delta between these two people. So
But that always existed, right? Like once the internet happened, or when social media happened, or when YouTube happened, YouTube is the biggest repository of knowledge that already existed. Those who had to use it would use it. Those who didn't. Actually, this very fact that you said, which is that most people aren't still gravitating towards it, tells me that Apple's decision to not spend $500 billion on compute and building these models almost seems prophetic in hindsight, because Apple's like, yo, we have all the users. We will call it Apple Intelligence and we will make them access AI in a manner that they already do, and that'll be the most intuitive. Like, I don't think I'm habituated to gravitate towards a chatbot to talk about my health problems, for example. This is new learned behavior.
yeah.
Right. But I'm more likely to WhatsApp a doctor about it, where like Meta will probably be able to enhance my conversation using AI. Or if I'm messaging, SMSing someone, then Apple will probably be able to help. So the things that I'm already doing, AI will likely need to be a part of it, as opposed to, that's why I think maybe adoption is low in that sense.
Yeah, the Apple strategy, or as I like to call it, the India strategy of for different reasons.
This is wait and watch.
Just wait and watch, and then when it gets cheap enough, you say, okay, now we clone, dude. Okay, here's the funniest thing. Okay, I've just started to learn. So I was very small 2 years ago, right, as a creator. So I knew very little about what's going on in the internet. Now the comment volume is increased. Now I've been on Twitter for a while. 2 years ago, when OpenAI, I keep equating this to a poker game with slightly different rules. It's almost like all the cards are face down. Okay, you have no idea what you'll find beneath the card. Google DeepMind came and opened one card and said, oh, this attention, all you need, interesting paper. Okay, here's an insight. But Google is like, I don't want to bet any further. And they left the card open and they left the table. Then OpenAI came, opened the next card, said, well, I like what's on the old card. I think I'm willing to bet on the next one. They opened it, LLMs came out. Then everyone got excited again, and then they kept betting on the card, right, on the table. Every card you open costs money, But when you open it for everyone on the table. So everyone can see it. Okay. And I feel like India is just waiting on the river. India and Apple are just waiting on the river where they're waiting on the last card and they're like, wait, let the last card open, then we'll just, copy paste this stuff. But I feel with Apple, it's intentional. With India, it's not so intentional, right? It's just, we don't have the talent or capability.
We
or
are
whatever.
still like, what game are we playing? What's going on?
But I'll tell you one thing, India has the talent. India absolutely has the talent, right? I've learned so much about how important courage is. Because actually you can figure out anything, right? If you're a reasonably smart person, you're given 3-6 months and you're just thrown at the problem every day and that's your full-time job, you can do it. But I see a lot of tweets by people who are like, yeah, India should build an LLM. Why are these people not building an LLM? Someone should go do it. Like, actually, you are also Indian. You can also do it if you're interested in the problem, right? We are interested in applied AI. Like, we want to do things on top of the model. So we are very clear that let somebody else play the poker table and we'll play on top of it. Like, that's been a clear thought for the last couple of years. But for the people who really want to see India build an LLM or really want to see India build a model, they can also contribute. And especially if they're in computer science, it's not a very big leap to spend a year, 2 years of your life figuring this out. The only problem is you're kind of late. Right? In the sense that by the time you go out and open the same card the previous guy has opened, which is now India can build LLMs, something new will come out. Right? So it's almost like you have to predict what's new, and research is gambling. You're going to spend money to open a card and the card might be a dud. Right? So it's a risk game, not a this thing game, and India has anyway always been low risk. Even Apple's been low risk.
Isn't it already pretty clear that LLMs are going to be commoditized?
Yeah.
Now, if until now every dollar of value that OpenAI has generated is now available for free.
Yeah.
Effectively, all the progress we made until so far is now free.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Would you call OpenAI a worthless company now?
No, because I really think if LLMs are commoditized, then distribution is king, right? Like, it's definitely not worthless. Yeah, DeepSeek came about last month, and then it has been it's got a lot of non-paying users. But GPT is still GPT, right? I think there's something to be said about brand and distribution and users, and so it's definitely not worthless.
So is it wise to see OpenAI as two companies? One, the research arm that's trying new things, and the other one is the product arm, which is ChatGPT. Right? Where it doesn't matter what's underneath it. It could be GPT, it could be something else, but it's a brand. And lots of people know the brand. They have the app on their phones and whatnot. And you will use the app like the way you use WhatsApp. It's not hard to make a chat app, but it's like, okay, everyone's on WhatsApp. But WhatsApp also has network effects, which, many of these AI apps don't. In that case, Microsoft is the smartest company out there, if you think like that. Because Microsoft literally didn't buy OpenAI. They just said, we'll fund your compute, whatever we learn about the ecosystem. And now they're funding other people. So Microsoft's like, well, I'm going to put this in Windows because I have distribution of Windows. Google's like, I'm going to put this in Chrome and in Google search. So you're right, which is that distribution wins. And it's this lesson we learn again and again and again and again and again. But also at the same time, someone has to take the risk of flipping the card open. And I thought that the person who flips the card open will be celebrated. We'll say, wow, amazing job. You proved what's possible. And thank you so much. And yes, even though it got commoditized and you lost, you still opened this. I thought this is what people would think. But like I said, I've been on the internet now for a while and people have just shat on Sam Altman for the last 2-3 weeks and called him names and this and that. I just cannot believe
it's brutal
that people have forgotten it. And they're like, haha, loser. Look, now your entire business is useless. Someone's replaced it in China with 5 million, lol. I'm just like, there's no value in innovation.
I mean, losers will always do that. But also, as of this morning, the 5 million number is in question, and actually the model's integrity is in question, which is that a lot of folks are saying that it has DeepSeek has been trained by thieving OpenAI data and or using OpenAI's proprietary model. What do you think about those accusations?
I mean, you can do RL with somebody else's model. You can do reinforcement learning with somebody else's model. You have an output and then you ask, and then you ask OpenAI, is this good or bad? So you're not really thieving off the model. You're just asking another model to grade your model up or down, right? And that's sort of an automated way to train models, right?
It's called distillation.
This is not really distillation. You're not making a bigger model smaller. You're just comparing your outputs you're asking OpenAI to grade, you're asking your ChatGPT to grade your outputs So you're basically getting important information from ChatGPT about, you're basically asking ChatGPT to do reinforcement learning on your behalf. But it's not distillation. It's not that you're making a smaller model. I think it's not against OpenAI's terms of service. Like you're not, I mean, maybe it is. Like you're not using direct outputs from OpenAI and then training a model on that. You're sort of using OpenAI to grade your model. But my question is, I don't think OpenAI can really talk about it because they scrape the internet for free. Right? It's almost like you're already in a gray area with so many artists and so many authors and so many these things that you scrape from. You've not given them anything. So someone trains on your outputs, even if you've trained on the actual tokens that OpenAI outputs, does it matter? Like you are already in a gray area, you're complaining about another gray area. This is wild, wild west, man. Like I think that's why I fundamentally think this is a worthless exercise. Yes, somebody has. It's one of those. I don't know. I'm sure there's a name for this problem statement, right? Where you have to do it, and you do it for very different reasons than maybe commercial. Like someone said, the word is Moloch, right? Moloch or whatever, which is some god for child sacrifice in one of these either Norse or Greek mythology or something, where it's like it's a race to the bottom, but you do it for reasons other than I want to make money. It's reasons like, oh, I want to just make the other person look bad, like what Meta did with OpenAI, right? Or it's more like a status game. And a lot of people don't believe that people can spend billions of dollars for status games, but they absolutely do and can. Like to be the victor of AI or whatever. Like what does it matter after you have enough money for yourself, right? So I think it's like one of those games where everybody loses at the end of the day, except maybe even the application layer guys. People keep saying the application layer guys are going to win, the wrapper guys are going to win. I think they're also going to lose because anyone can build a wrapper and AI can also build wrappers for you. I think ultimately only the distribution guys will win, the people with brand, because this has happened before. Like, I will tell you a completely commoditized industry, okay? Sugar water. Right? If you take the example of sugar water, which you can make at home for zero, like maybe 0.2 rupees, right? Where sugar costs a certain amount, maybe 1 teaspoon, flavor costs a little amount, and water you can get from the tap, right? Maybe if it's heated water, it's slightly more expensive. So 0.2, 0.5 rupees. But yet Coca-Cola has been a brand in this space for so long. The can costs 20, 30 rupees. What is the margin really? Like, where does the margin come from? It comes from years and years and years of Coca-Cola putting that red thing in front of you with that Coca-Cola writing. It's like, it's just been ingrained in you where you're okay paying 30 bucks for a bottle of sugar water, which is strange, right? But I assume that the same thing is going to happen here.
No, it's also, you can draw parallels between television and social media, right? Which is that there existed brands so they have a leg up in continuing to be strong brands on social media, but new stars will emerge on social media, new brands will emerge on social media, and there'll be many losers from the previous world. Yeah, so there will be new ones also. It is, everyone has an opportunity to continue having a strong brand in the new world, but there will be many losers and there'll be many new winners. So it's not as black and white. I think brand does matter, but being able to come into the new world in the right way, right? Like you can't, like television superstars could not take the television way onto social media. They had to figure out a new way to do it. So I think,
But then
I
would
think
you agree? Would you agree that if you can build anything, let's just talk about digital products for a second, right? Like forget about physical products because there's logistics and all involved in physical products. But let's say digital products. Would you agree that if AI can build, if the foundational model is useless from a commercial perspective, not from a value perspective, value creation, yes, value capture zero. If you agree that hosting is commoditized, so if anyone can host the models. If you agree that the wrapper layer AI itself, you can ask the AI to build a wrapper and it'll build it for you. Maybe not today, maybe 2 years in the future. And all that is completely commoditized where any kid with a laptop can do it or any kid with a mobile phone can do it. Then the only thing that's valuable is the distribution and the brand piece. But then the distribution and the brand piece, you can just sum it down into attention, right? So are you then saying attention is more valuable than skill?
I don't think that products will be that commoditized, like in the sense that, okay, so the base models are available, but right now you're still seeing different people make different products for, like, someone will make a analytics tool using it. Someone will make there'll be 5 different types of analytics tools, and you've used a bunch of these. Do you find there to be no difference in all of them, even though they're using GPT at the base layer? No, there's some difference. So this assumption that the products will all be the same, so the only difference is going to be attention, that I think fundamentally is not true. There has to be some difference in the products. In if there is 19-20 ka farak, then the attention makes a big difference, because even a 2% delta at the beginning of a product cycle compounds rapidly over 6 months. Um, so yeah, attention, ability to garner attention and build brand will be mega useful, but I don't think that products will be undifferentiated. Like, it's not possible that all products will be the same.
I'll tell you a killer idea, okay? You've heard of Lovable, the company? There's this app called Lovable, okay? They've gone from $0 to $10 million in 2 months. They're basically exactly like AutoCode Pro. Like, you put in a prompt, it'll generate an entire app for you, and it's a usable app. You can download the app. I mean, you can deploy the app. So they've done it pretty well, and it's useful. Like, I tried it for like a couple of small things yesterday. I'm like, this is getting better. Same with Repl, right? Repl's building agents. I'll tell you a killer product that is going to come out either this year, next year, or at some point, where you point it to another product. Let's say you're talking about analytics. Let's say you want to copy Mixpanel. You point it to Mixpanel.com. You're like, I want an exact clone of Mixpanel, exact to exact, and it makes a fake account on Mixpanel. It gets access in. Mixpanel is right now maybe enterprise only, right? Maybe you can't log in as an end user, but let's take Mixpanel as an example, or some app as an example. Let's say HubSpot or something, right? It'll go clone every screen. It will rewrite that exact code, give you the exact same thing, but with a 20-30% different UI. So my worry is the killer app for something like, agentic building an entire app for you is just go clone this other app and give it to me exactly with slightly different UI and slightly. This is how a lot of SaaS companies in India think, by the way. In Chennai, there are a bunch of SaaS companies that look at US companies, maybe a CRM, like, there are a bunch of companies that have done this already in the past, right? Where they look at something and they're like, let me re-engineer this exact same thing. Right? They've done the innovative work of figuring out what flows that need to be there. Let me just give the exact same thing at a much cheaper price. Yes, player one will continue to make the money because they have the brand. Like a Salesforce is going to continue to make the money because they have the brand, they have the relationships. But I think in terms of products, I do think it's going to be undifferentiated because cloning will be dirt cheap. Not now, but 2, 3, 5 years in the future. But users will still care about the original brand that came up with it because they're going to be competitive. They're going to change the tools. I've heard a lot about them. Customer support will be better. They're not going to scam me out of my money. So it's brand and trust that you're still going to that main product, the first champion for.
And there'll be no legal recourse if you copy someone in word to word.
I mean, it won't do word to word. No, AI will change all the words. Same word, but 10% difference. I mean, you can already do that with AI. I can already do image to image, dump an image in and be like, I want something 20% similar, and you will get something that's copyright free at the end of it. AI is a very good remix engine, right? And ultimately, all ideas are remixed, right? Most of everything that you, me, everyone in the world does is take something that we were inspired by and then change it by 20-30% and be like, this is how it is. When you get older and you've done a lot of this remixing, then you can really start having original ideas because you're changing things by you're sharing things by 70-80% instead of just 10-20%. I just feel like the most valuable thing to do right now would be to be a social media company. That's the most valuable thing you could be right now because it doesn't matter what happens, it's going to happen on your battlefield. Like, I think the Elon Musk X acquisition in 2-3 years, we'll realize is very, very valuable. It's already more valuable than it was 2 years ago, right? It's you can never replace that with AI because even if there are bots on the platform, you can never replace that with AI because you want to see what's going on in real time and you don't want fabricated news from AI. A Nikhil Kamath and a Modi podcast, you would never want to watch an AI version of it because you're like, I really want to know what Modi is saying and I really want to hear this conversation. It needs to be a real conversation. So I feel like the distribution and access is the most valuable part of the future. But then I was wrong about this, thinking that it's going to be the most valuable part of the future because as I started building more of it myself, I realized this is how it's been all the time, forever. Because I used to think, man, where are you going to get skill from? But it turns out if you have distribution and you have a little bit of capital, you can just hire for skill, right? And then you're able to just, with what you do with AI, pointing at another tool and saying clone that, you can also do with humans. If you can afford it and you have distribution, right? You can also take 5 engineers right now and be like, I want that clone. And they can give you a reasonable clone if they're good engineers. And you might say there's a price for a good engineer. Let's say 20 lakhs an annum, 50 lakhs an annum, a crore an annum, whatever that number is. If you can afford it, and you have five, and you don't need like 1,000 of them, right? You need like 4, 5 of them. You can already clone. And I think for somebody with infinite money, let's say a potential billionaire, right? The difference between spending $1 million and zero is not that much. But the distribution is very hard to gain on the fly, right? Like, because suppose I come to Tanmay and I'm like, Tanmay, I really want to advertise this product with you. Tanmay, who has enough money and has enough leverage, can always be like, no, right? So you are still dependent on somebody else to lend you that distribution. You're still borrowing in some sense. You're still renting in some senses. So I feel like the most valuable thing in the future is to pack on as much distribution. And sometimes distribution is not just social media distribution. It could also just be offline access. Hey, I know a guy who knows a guy who knows this. Or of course, there are like infinite games you can play offline. I think we are also very memory hold into just software or just building apps or just building content. I mean, start a hospital if you really want to, right?
Do you think DeepSeek was actually trained for 5.5 million?
I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's any way to know. According to the paper and according to some people I really look up to and trust in this space who train models for a living. We fine-tune models, we build on top of them, we don't train them. But the people who train models for a living, I think they believe it's possible for 5.5 million. But also, what I do know about models is if you can train a model for 5.5 million, it has good performance. You can train the same thing for 100 million and get even better performance, right? So my worry is not that we were able to do it for cheap. America will bloat up the price again, but have a much, much more higher quality model that comes out. And we keep discounting OpenAI and they keep coming up with new cool stuff. Like, I really think people are sleeping on Operator. I think it's the best thing they ever made. And it's going to get better, of course.
Did you use it?
No, not yet. But I've seen the demos. I've heard, like on Reddit, there are some people who are talking about Operator. On Twitter, like the people who have access to Operator, like the big tech CEOs who use it on a day-to-day basis are like, this is great. Because an operator is basically like an employee, in some senses, right? It's doing a bunch of random tasks, slightly connected, slightly unconnected on a browser. If you look at what 99% of the employees that most companies have, they're sitting on I'm talking about digital employees, they're sitting on a browser, they're sitting on Windows, like they're computer using, if you think about it, right? 90%, 99% of the work is computer using. And the rest is planning and talking, collaborating with other computer users, which is, I think that's the thing that people should have been more excited about, in my opinion, versus a DeepSeek. But also, by the way, DeepSeek also makes inference cheaper. Huh? So you can also just outputs are cheaper to produce. And if you look at that trend line, it's going to be intelligence is going to be worthless. Like, it's going to be like worth 0.0001 for an output, for an answer, which is awesome. But it goes back to that Ilya tweet, right? Like, if you value intelligence, you're going to have a very bad few years or something like that, he said, right? Where it's not a very good time to go out and say you're a smart person. Smart in terms of pure math type smart. Same with what Peter Thiel said, right? Like, the math people are going to be outcompeted by word people, because it's just doing a deal, you still have to do it in real world. Building trust, you still have to do it in the real world. But like, doing a very difficult calculation or building a very difficult app might just be in the domain of AI and might just happen very quickly.
Did you sell any of your NVIDIA stock?
No. Did you?
No. I mean, we woke up to the news of, holy shit, world is down by 20%. So I didn't have a chance to sell, first of all. If today's technology can be made for way cheaper with less compute, it does not mean today's compute is useless. It means more compute will lead to better technology. So I don't think we're going to use less compute going forward. I think we will want to discover what can we do with all this compute then. So people still going to be buying GPUs. If you made DeepSeek with like 10,000 GPUs, then imagine what OpenAI can do now with whatever, 2 million GPUs, right? Whatever the fuck they want to do. So I don't see what's the point of selling your stock right now. But if I was a hedge fund with a lot of GPUs that I used to just mine stuff, and as a side project, I happen to make an LLM that kind of competes with the best LLM in the world right now, I would probably also have a short position on NVIDIA to enjoy this moment. But that doesn't mean NVIDIA is useless, of course.
Yeah, market is like very news driven, man. Like, I just didn't realize 2 years ago, maybe it was me being naive or stupid or whatever, right? I just didn't realize how much of the world is just driven by memes. right? Or
Yeah.
vibes or whatever it is. It's just like you have, if you can somehow align 50 YouTube channels or 50 influential people on social media to talk nonsense about something, and it eventually reaches mainstream news cycles. It goes out in waves to the mainstream. All of this stuff can happen. I just didn't realize how much was. I thought people were rational. People are irrational in droves. They're making stupid decisions because yes, now somebody's going to come out and use that R10 technique or R1 technique to just and now spend $100 million on it instead of a few million, right?
No,
And
of
that's
course
going to be
not.
a better
Like,
model.
I mean, all it actually took was 50 of the top distribution channels to say something really great about someone, and then they became president, right? Like we're seeing it time and again. Actually, attention is insanely paramount.
Yeah,
Well, Satya Nadella spoke about,
Jevons
Jevons
Parrot.
paradox.
We spoke about it
Uh,
too, right? If you can do
yeah,
something with 5 mil, it will be even better if you spend 100 million do this, use the same technique.
yeah, and the my one of my favorite tweets was the video with Rajan Anandan and Sam Altman going viral now, where Sam Altman was like, "Hey, my job is to tell you that you won't be able to compete with us, and your job is to try." Um, and yeah, people are really enjoying dunking on Altman right now. But to be fair, look, I just feel like if I was a CEO at the frontier of tech, I feel like Sam, by being this public, has gotten the advantage of being this public. Like the advantage is settled. Like at this point, him going and talking more on podcasts and doing more interviews it's a diminishing utility at this point. So I feel like he can stop now. The advantage of being early on AI is already set. But yeah, I think his competition is fairly social and present. So I get why he has to do it. But yeah, if you're at the frontier, you're gonna get attacked.
I mean, if you also saw Sama's tweets and even this statement that he said to Rajan or whatever, right? I think it is normal if you're doing good work and if you are at the frontier, at the point where you're at the frontier, to say some. I mean, you can't be a successful founder without being a little bit
Pissing
cocky.
people off. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like it's part and parcel, right? Like I told you, courage and confidence are the hardest parts of building something new. And
Yeah.
you have to have a little bit of extra of that to even attempt something like what OpenAI did, right? Like when at the time where everyone told them it's not possible, you have to be able to ignore everybody and be like, shut up, I know better. Even though you might not know better, right? You might be wrong. And of course, if you look at something 3 years later and be like, haha, you said that, of course, whether it was 3 years later or 10, like this is one thing people do about Byju's, which I don't really like. Sure, Byju's went down and some bad things happened and all that. But there's one thing people say about Byju's, which I always correct them on, which is people say that, Byju's was putting content on tablets and giving it to people. What a loser. We can just get it on the internet on YouTube for free now, right? But actually, if you go and see Byju's history, at the time they started doing this, the reason they started doing this is because internet penetration in India was bad at that time. It was not possible to get some kid in some village to be able to consume this content or even consume YouTube because they just didn't have internet. So Byju's is like, what is the alternative to this? Let me just take a device, fill in content with there because internet penetration is bad, and just give this tablet so there's no streaming, there's no loading. There's a time where streaming content from the internet was not a thing in
Which is
India.
not so long ago. This was until I think 2015 or 2016 is when Geo happened. Pre-Geo, it just wasn't as accessible.
But people apply today's lens. They're like, today it's easy to get content on YouTube. Therefore, haha, what a loser, Byju's still using tablets. He looks like the old this thing, right? But if you look at it, it's like you're applying today's lens to a problem statement
Yeah.
from 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was, right? And I think people do that a lot. Like you're applying today's DeepSeek lens to OpenAI's risk several years ago, 2017 or 2018 or
Yeah.
whatever, right? It's not fair. Like,
It's
it's, not,
yeah.
it's just not fair.
But like you said, like innovation is in a world of AI, innovation is not respected.
Yeah, I think the strategy is to just be really humble. Like if I was Sam Altman, I mean, because this statement about this, can you train a model for 5 million? It was eventually possible, no? Whether it's 3 years later, 10 years later, 50
Correct.
years later, at some point, some breakthrough would come out. So at some point, Sam Altman would be made fun of and say, haha, we're able to train a model for 5 million. It took several years from when he said whatever it is, maybe almost 1.5 years since when he said that for it to happen. Maybe it could have taken 3, maybe it could have taken 20, maybe it could have taken 50, right? Nobody knows, but at some point he was going to be made fun of for this.
Yeah, I think Elon's played a big role in the villainization of Sam also, and I think like people forget that like Elon also has a vested interest. Like Elon is amazing at positioning all his motivations um to
Freedom of
be
speech.
more, yeah, freedom of speech. Like all his motivations are good for everyone, and anybody who's against his motivations of his private companies is against everyone. Like he's able to position it really well. Like, okay, you can never attack SpaceX because this is about humanity, even though 100% of the people are going to be dead by the time any of this ever comes to life. You can't attack Twitter anymore because it's freedom of speech. Even though literally I do a survey with every single person who I meet now who's on Twitter, is how much porn is on your timeline now. At this point, Twitter is basically a half a porn website. And I'm asking men, I'm asking women, I'm asking founders, I'm asking artists. Every single person has said, yes, there is porn on my timeline now. But you can't say anything because it's like, oh, freedom of speech. Then the freedom of speech means it's just everything. Everything should be allowed on your timeline. Everything is kosher now. Like I'm sitting with some friends last night, and this female friend of mine, she's like, she's a fan of Elon's, and I said, yeah, how are you getting porn on your timeline? Like, I get it, some dude gets it. She's like, yeah, but this is just the price you got to pay, right? If you have to be okay with everything. So he's excellent. Even AI, which is you want neutral AI, which there are several examples of. Okay, neutral does not mean populist, right? Like Grok is basically populist AI. What are people feeling right now? So if you search for draw me three Nazis or whatever, Elon's a part of it. Like it's no longer neutral. It's just what people are saying. So I feel bad for Sam for that reason also, which is that, oh, we've forgotten that this dude is stuck around with this massive project for longer than anybody else, and now he's the villain.
Yeah, Elon does this thing. Okay, it's a politician's trick. Okay, where you find an enemy and you create an alliteration with the enemy's name of something that makes fun of the enemy. Like for example, if your name is Sam, take the first letter, take S, and then put another word before Sam, which makes him look bad. And Elon's version of this is Swindler Sam.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a proper politician thing where you like look at,
Bro, crooked Hillary is what Trump has been saying for very long.
yeah, because that people are relatively not as smart, right? So when they hear an alliteration, it just sticks in your head. Oh, Swindler Sam, Swindler Sam. You hear it 10 times, then you're like, oh, Sam, Swindler Sam. Right? These
Yeah.
guys do it so well. Like Elon is not as autistic, Asperger's syndrome as people think he is if he's capable of doing this. Because then he knows what he's weaponizing, right? And I've seen him do it like a few times here and there. It's not that he's a bad person, but it's like it is war, right? And it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
have you heard the Mook theory of internet war, internet beefs?
No, what is it?
So it's this thing, okay, I'll send it to you after this. I don't know, remember who wrote it, but basically a Mook theory is the internet is basically like feudal fights, okay, where there are these knights like Elon, Sam, this, that, and all the audience chooses a team. They choose to be Team Elon or Team Sam, and we call these audiences mooks, where they're nameless faces, anonymous, and they choose one side. And the entire game is they want to be noticed by a knight. So they do everything in their power. Like there's this Ian guy from Philippines or something that keeps reply guying to Elon, right? They just want to be noticed by Elon. And the day they are noticed, they become ardent fans, right? So it's almost like it's war that's going on. It's an information war, not a real war. And people want to belong to a side because they have nothing better to do, right? And there's actual weaponization of like misinformation. Like someone said something wrong. I quote tweeted, I was like, this is false. And one guy's like, who cares, bro? It's funny.
Of course, of course, of course. For most people, it's entertainment. For most people, all of this is just something I can talk to at a party. Like, I mean, this includes us, right? Like saying, for example, like look what, like I don't know if you followed Elon's incident with Asmongold, the Twitch streamer, which is Elon claimed to be the best in the world at some game, he ranked 97 or something like that. And this Twitch streamer who previously was a fan of Elon's, and they were friends, and they would follow each other, and they would DM each other. He did some investigation and he said this seems slightly suspect. Like Elon's not actually really good at this game if you watch his live streams. Then Elon took away his verified badge. Elon leaked his DMs with this streamer. By the way, has gone ahead and deleted these tweets. And Asmongold came out and said that, yo, what the fuck? Like I was friends with this guy. I was a fan of his. Uh, and all of a sudden, I've effectively been whatever, his he Elon blocked him or whatever, right? So this whole incident seemed a little like, yo, are we talking about the same Elon Musk, the guy who's sending rockets to Mars? Like, what the fuck just happened? So, and all of this stuff kind of gets like drowned out in the larger scheme of things. You kind of forget that he's also still human only,
Yeah.
right? Like, is it? I don't know. I feel like just crazy, like devotion or hero worshipping, is possible with anyone. If you thought like, okay, at one point 5 years ago, you would think that, oh, these crazy MAGA supporters or Trump supporters, they're all silly and stupid. Why is the same behavior but for Elon not as stupid? Just because someone who knows how to code is doing it, just because someone slightly nerdy is doing it, just because someone who's perceivably slightly smarter who's doing it.
Someone told me this the other day. They were like, actually, world is mostly people with aura leading other people who don't have as much aura.
Aura, yeah, yeah, it's basically it.
Yeah, and once you have aura, it doesn't matter if you're good, bad, this thing. You just have aura, so it makes up for everything. I feel like the right model for somebody like Elon or anybody is just deeply flawed humans who are also very good at certain things. And that's what the human condition is. You're probably really good at climbing a tree, but not very good at swimming. And then, there's some people who are going to constantly say this person is really bad at swimming. And there's going to be other people that say this person is really good at climbing a tree. And then if economically climbing a tree is rewarded, then the person gets into a position of power. If economically swimming is rewarded, then the other person gets put in a position of power. It's just humans are deeply flawed. But we still hero worship because we're like, maybe that's the kind of flawed I want to be, right? So I don't know, like it's a very complicated mess of emotions and this and that, but also it is really fun. Like 2 years ago, I was very scared, right? Because I knew that people are masters at creating misinformation, right? People don't care about the truth. But now I'm like, it's enjoyable to be in the fight, right? Or to be a small part of it, or even not be a part of it, but be on the sidelines. It's just enjoyable. Like, what else would you do with life otherwise? Sit at home and watch TV and watch other people fight anyway? Like, I have newfound respect for Republic TV now. I know they're horrible for the economy, but or people or brains or whatever, when people sit on news and argue for 10 minutes or 20 minutes. But I'm like, people want that. That's why that's a thing. People want it. It gives them a break from their lives. It allows them to play on one side, and it's all fictional anyway.
All right. On that grim note, calling it a day on today's episode. Thanks for watching, and see you guys soon.